All right, so this is part three of the speed build. This is going to be the final part. I had initially wanted to split this up into two parts, but I never ended up finishing it, or the second part. But the world is actually out now and it's been completed. I missed several hours of modeling because, um, fuck, what happened? I was like baking lights and then my whole computer like went to shit and I had to restart for some reason. That's actually something that happens quite often. Well, it doesn't happen quite often, but it happens where like I'll be doing something in Unity and then usually it's like baking light might trigger it, and this is rare, but it happens where like once the light bake finishes, it was it would like launch command prompts for every software that I have open, which is really weird, and I don't know why it happens, but it does. But fucked up my recording, so there's a lot missing. There's also a lot missing because I get kind of lazy, and I didn't record like when I had to completely redo things, which happens sometimes where I'll get into the game of something that and I'm like looking at my models and I'll be in the game and then something's just fucked for some reason and I don't know, and I usually have to go to like back in Blender, or like I'll do something like set up lighting and it's all shitty. I don't know. I honestly can't remember specifically what any of those things were. This honestly all happened last week. The world went public, pushed out Friday. Yeah, Friday. And, and so you can go to it. It looks great. I actually really liked how this turned out. A lot of this is me doing the props and final touches on this world. This is basically like all the Unity stuff that I had to do. At this point, I'm still modeling. I'm making a ton more lights. So it was like lights, pull objects, bar items. The lights here, I do multiple string lights in this world, and I did them basically all the same. Where I um, I bring in a curve and I set the origin of I model the curve out to be what I want it to be, add depth to it, make the origin of the curve where like the outlet is, bring in my other object, make the origin the same, do the array and curve modifier. You add a empty object to control like the rotation of the object on the curve with the array modifier. And then you can like rotate the object around the curve and it looks really good. And then you saw me earlier, or just a second ago, I had to go and find I had to go and look at each object to make sure that it was rotated correctly and wasn't like going through the wall or something. But I pretty much do that a lot. You can see I'm working on the stairs here. I do more lights at the top entrance to the upstairs on these stairs, and I also do it to the top exit onto the balcony. And I think it looks really good. It was kind of weird to just have the one set of string lights around the booth that was downstairs, but since adding it to different parts of the world, it really, I think, brings it together. And then the neon signs I think look really good too. Um, at the beginning I was modeling those, and the neon lights I actually I modeled those a long time ago. When I modeled those, I wasn't so educated on like atlasing and baking textures, and so those models are actually not as optimized as they could be. And so when I brought them in, I re-atlas them, baked everything to one texture atlas so that it was using one material instead of like six or something stupid. And then I moved it all around. And that open sign is actually the same open sign that I use in the Black Hat, which is part of that. Those neon signs I actually have up on Booth for free if you wanted them. I had the trusses I had made in the Black Hat and I brought them in here, but I decided to end up making my own. And basically the way I make the trusses is I bring in a vertice, extrude it to make that shape, and then I add skin modifier, then I add subdivide modifier, and then you can add in vertices within those and then attach them to get that truss look. Since the subdivide modifier and the skin modifier will add a ton of vertices and faces to your objects, so after you apply them, what I usually do is I usually select the whole thing and then like press X and do limited dissolve, and limited dissolve will take away, it's almost like the decimate modifier, the planner. I think it's called planner. I haven't used Decimate in a while, but it will get rid of all the edges based on like the degree, the angle degree that you set for the edge. I hope that made sense. Here I'm texturing out the light above the pool table. I actually really like how that turned out. I think it looks really good. I found I've been using the Substance Share website from Substance for a lot of materials. One thing I need to figure out in Substance, and I'm still like really new to it, even though I'm getting comfortable enough in Substance where I'm like comfortable enough to texture in Substance, but there's still like a lot I don't know, a lot that I don't know that would like be really beneficial to know, like how to do transparent objects, because it would have been kind of cool to have that like stained glass look on the light above the pool table to be transparent. But what I ended up doing was I ended up just adding emissive to that material, and then yeah, you just add a little emissive to that material and then add the emissive to the light bulbs as well, and then it kind of does the same thing. Add some lights in there in Unity. It looks pretty good. I'm actually really happy with it. I think it looks great. And so here's me modeling out the string lights on the door to the exterior balcony right there. I think little lights like that are a really nice touch. That's probably why Red Sims light string lights are really popular, because those are good assets. Honestly, making all your assets like I do is kind of unnecessary. The more I think about it, the more I like think it's unnecessary. I like doing it because that's what I like doing, is modeling. So I like to do it, but it's totally not necessary for a space to be like yours, as long as you're like getting everything that you're using ethically. You're not like stealing anything. I think it's all fair game, and it's still like people use ArcViz assets all the time, and even with that, you can like still very clearly see in like a style between the people that are designing those spaces, even if they're like the same assets everyone's using. Right here, I'm modeling the freezer I had made for this bar, and I literally I went to, I don't even remember where it was. It was some bar world, and I thought it looked really fucking cool. There was this bar world in VRChat. I don't know who it's by. Basically, what I'm saying is I stole that idea of that freezer directly from another world, but I can't even remember what the world was called. But I really liked it, and I thought it looked really good. Basically, they had a freezer that looks just like that, and they had like a particle system in there where it looked like the ice was giving out like some fog or some steam or something like that. And then they had like little ice cubes in there that you could pick up with the scooper thing. I really liked it, so I stole it. I stole the idea. And I used it as a reference. And then I also really like how the textures came out on it, because I did that in Substance too, which you'll see me do in a little bit. Right here, I'm making the cups. The shader I used in Unity for these cups is Silence Fake Glass Shader, and that makes it look super fucking cool. I have noticed, though, sometimes when I use that shader in other worlds, like when I worked on Obsidian Tower, I used that shader in the world, and I brought the bloom up a little bit more than what I normally do, and the bloom actually caused the glare thing that's on that shader to like flash. It was really weird, so I ended up taking it off, I think, there. But here it looked great, and I didn't notice any issues like that, and so I kept it, and it's in the world, and they look awesome. This is me making flags, because normally when I take my pride flags and I put them in, I've been using the same models that my friend had made a while ago, actually. They're really good models, and I really like them, but I wanted something a little bit different, and I thought the little flag poles, so I took the So I made those little flags, and I put my 2 flags that I like to put up, which is the trans flag and the like gay pride flag. And I think they looked really good. And actually, I made 10 more after this project that they're up on Booth if you want those. Those are up on Booth for free. And I even made a white one, so if you wanted to edit your own colors to it or something. But I really liked how these turned out. I'm probably going to use, well, I don't know. I'm probably going to make more versions of the flags because I like having the flags in the worlds. I just, I think I just need to model the flags to fit for the world, and the little flag stands here is like fucking perfect. And it adds detail to the bar, which is nice. Okay, so this is what I was talking about with, so here I'm texturing all these props. The freezer here, I really liked how it turned out. I ended up using some I can't remember which material it was. It was like some iron edge material thing, or I used like an edge mask, which I'm not too familiar with using custom mask in here, and it made the edges of the freezer look super worn, and it looks super good, and I'm really into it. One thing I'm really bad with graphic design. So doing stuff like I'm doing right now, where I'm trying to like design a little cool thing to put on the little the tabletopper thing. I think everything I did like made it look really bad. Like I think everything I do in terms of like graphic design really sucks. And I think it objectively sucks. So I kind of just like fucked with it and did something super generic. And those pictures that I'm using, I actually got them from, I had just modeled a food truck for another project, and I had all these food pictures for the trucks that I had made, and I just brought them over and used them there. I actually really like texturing in Substance with like pictures like that is actually pretty easy. I'm surprised at how much faster it is to use Substance than what I was doing. I think what I'm doing here is I'm beginning to check all these objects and making sure that, making sure that the faces aren't flipped the wrong way, which it seems like there was like a lot of little things, because it's super annoying to open up Unity and realize you can see through things because half your normals are flipped. So I'm just going through double checking, and then going through and also merging objects together, which I always fuck up anyways, where I'll go through, I'll merge a bunch of stuff together, and basically what I try to do is I try to merge based on occlusion zone. So like I'm like, okay, if you're down here, and I want, you're gonna see everything in this or in this room, and I want you to occlude everything that's not in this room. And that's kind of how I go about it. I'm like, okay, there's these objects with this material, I can join these together, and then it'll cut down on draw calls based on that, right? And that's what I kind of do. And then when I get into Unity, there's always like some small fucking thing that makes no sense for it to be by itself, and I'm like, fuck. And sometimes when I go into Unity, like people were asking about taking Blender materials, which is like that node system, which is what Blender uses in the shading thing, and then when you export, bringing that over. And what I do is I recreate all my. I'll probably make a video on this because there was multiple people asking. And this is kind of like an obscure place to put it inside the middle of a 40-minute speed build, but I'll explain it a little bit, where like basically what I do is I export the FBX, and then the object comes in. It's not textured. Some things might be textured because it'll try to link up and recreate the materials that I had in Blender. But basically in Blender, I'm not worried about, for the most part, I'm not worried about like how the object looks. I'm not worried about the materials and making it look as realistic as I possibly can. Basically, when I'm in Blender, all like my main goal is just to make sure that my UVs are right, because when I bring it into Unity, I'm gonna recreate all my materials with all my textures, and I'm gonna compress the textures, and I'm gonna make it look like how I want it to look in there. And so in Blender, I just don't really care too much. Like, I just ultimately, all I really need is to bring in the texture so I can see it on the object, and then I can UV the object to look like how I want it to look. And so I know when I bring it over to Unity, it's going to look, more or less normal. Sometimes you make something in Blender and you bring it over into Unity and it just looks like shit. That happens sometimes where I'll be working on a world or like something small, and I'll bring it over and then it just looks like garbage, and I'll light it and it still looks like garbage, and I'm like, oh fuck. That usually just means you gotta relight again. Like, I don't know. It's taken me so long to figure out lighting, honestly. Like I figured out, like, it's like the basics of lighting are pretty simple and you can get the concepts down pretty quickly, but for me to get to a point where I'm like baking I'm baking properly and things look good, it's taken me like quite a bit. And honestly, I can't even really pinpoint exactly what I'm doing differently than what I used to be doing while I'm still like doing the same concepts. It's just coming out better for me. One of the main tricks that I figured out, which, who told me? Someone told me. I can't even remember who told me this, but I was baking lights and I was still getting like artifacts on like objects. I think it was like a chair. I was still getting artifacts, and someone told me, I can't even remember who it was. Someone told me to go into the mesh and go and scale it in light maps, which I wasn't doing for the longest time. So I learned about this like a few projects or several projects ago actually, but still feels kind of new to me. And I scaled them in light maps, and all of a sudden when you bake lights, it looks way better because it's bigger in the light map. And that was a huge help. And now I was like, before this, I was advocating for baking at lower res because it was always smaller. But I've actually started baking at like 2K and then compressing afterwards, which it usually turns out fine, but it seems to give me better bakes than the lower res stuff, which obviously that makes sense. Here I realized I needed more stuff and I didn't really know what to make, so I like Googled essential bar props or something like that, and I chose like several that I thought would be good. There were some things on there that I was just like, I just could not be fucked to like model. But the stuff I did make I thought was really cool. I really added a lot. So I did the little ice bucket. I did those little shot pouring things, the little rubber mats, and then here's a cutting board, and I make a knife. And usually when I make knives, they look like shit. But the knife I ended up making here looks really good. I think the limes looked really good, but for some reason I was actually having bake issues on that, and increasing the light maps on that object didn't really help that much. It was joined together with other props, like the other props that I'm modeling here. I think this is what, those are the napkins I made. I really like that touch. This is where I think I made the chalk for the what is it? For the pool table that's like on the wall. I don't think I've modeled that yet in this video. I'm also taking like other objects that I had already textured out or something, and then I'm going in there and I'm redoing it and adding it to the atlas of these objects so that I can go into substance and texture them all at once. I did the same thing with the fridge because I saw that I was having issues with the fridge. It was just kind of plain to me, and you can do a lot in Substance. Like, one thing that I'm really happy with is in Substance on the fridge I added fingerprints, and I think You can just get like such good small details like that in here. See right here, I'm adding the fingerprints. It's honestly so good. I'm really into it. It's just so fucking cool. Cause like before you can, or before I could never do that, or if you were gonna do like intense texture editing like that, it was like way harder to do that in like Photoshop or GIMP. While in here, you can just easily add it. It takes 2 seconds. It's so good. I redid the mats in here, and I actually think it looks really bad. So I ended up using the same texture, which is actually part of the atlas of the bathroom props that I had made for the black cat. I ended up just keeping it. Honestly, you know what? If I were to retexture that, there's a material there's like a rubber material that I used on the outside. It would honestly probably be pretty good to have it on that whole mat. Here, you can't even really see it in game, but what I did, and this goes back to like some of the details that you can do, is I kind of like lightly painted on some chalk on the wood so that it would look like that there was like chalk and stuff. I thought that was really good. I was really proud of myself for that detail. But like once I compressed in Unity, you can't really like tell. You can't really tell that I did that, which is like whatever. But I thought it was cool. And and the other thing is for that cutting board, I had forgot to bring it in with those objects, so I never actually textured it. So what I ended up doing is taking part of the wood texture for the chalkboard or the chalk prop for the pool table that you put your hands on, like that wood. I ended up just like scaling it down to fit right there, and it ended up looking pretty good, so I kept it. And here I am. You know, initially I was trying to with those fridges, the small fridges. What I wanted to do with those initially was to make it so that you could open those and grab things out of it. But I couldn't figure out hinges, which I see people do all the time, and I think it's cool. They're kind of a pain. The hinge joint thing with doors is kind of a pain because it doesn't like always act right, and you gotta have to like walk forward and move the door, so it's kind of a pain to do that in Worlds. But for the fridge, I thought it would be cool. I couldn't figure out the hinge thing. I'm not very educated on it, so that didn't work out, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong with the udon node stuff that I was doing with those. So I ended up my workaround was basically to just take the collider off of it and then just let people grab through the glass. Here I'm making these are super simple shapes, the labels for the drinks. So basically what I'm doing is I just opened up GIMP. I'm doing like all these basic drinks for these models that I had just made, and I'm going into Substance, or I'm going to eventually go into Substance, bring it in, and put those on as if they were like labels and stuff, and then do the glass and everything else in there. And you can see that's what I'm doing right now. Is I try to get kind of fancy with it because these aren't like real bottles of alcohol, so I wasn't too worried about it, but did want to kind of be a little fancy with it. I actually think the glass came out on the beer bottles came out a little not as reflective, which I could change. I'd have to go back in and do it. I thought they looked good though, but in game they're not really doing what I want them to do, and I kind of want the metallics to be a bit stronger. As for right now, it's fine. One thing that I wanted to do, which I'm sure there's a way to do it, and I just didn't do it right, where like those like simple labels that I made, I put the transparent, or I brought them in and I brought the roughness all the way up because I wanted them to be rough compared to the glass bottle behind it. But when I did that, you could clearly tell that the shape of that texture like over the bottles, so it wasn't really looking good. So I eventually just got rid of the roughness and kept it the same as the bottle so that you couldn't tell the difference between like that texture and the bottle itself. Something was actually really weird happening with when I was doing these. Like, I'm doing the wine bottle separately now, which is on the same atlas, but because I don't know why, but it just, the UVs for that, when I had joined the wine bottle with the rest of the bottles, the UVs for the wine, like the only UVs I saw in Substance were the wine bottle, and I didn't see any of the UVs for the other bottles, which was really weird. And I kept going back and forth trying to figure out why it was like that. And it sucks because when I brought it back in, I ended up having to rebake. I ended up having to bake the textures together so that they would all be on one atlas. And baking textures, like compared to texturing in Substance, baking textures in Blender is very time consuming. I made a video about how I did it, or how I do it. It's on my YouTube channel. I did it with the Amber Tower assets. I showed how I had done it, which it makes sense to do it because you want the least amount of materials, but at the same time, it's super time consuming compared to just being able to do everything in that other program. But here I am placing the bottles that are not going to be able to pick up. Honestly, like, I made these bottles, but honestly, I may do this in the future. I may switch these out on SketchUp. A lot of people use this asset on SketchUp. There is a free set of like liquor and alcohol bottles that is really good. I've used it in commissions before, and I used it mainly just in commissions. It looks really good because all the bottles look, or there's like maps for all the, metallics and roughness. Like, putting it all together looks really good. It's a good asset. Lots of people use it, and it looks realistic. It might have been a better option to use it there, but also at the same time, the beer bottles I use are my drinks, and the fake liquor bottles kind of matched that style, so that's, I think, also good. I guess if I were to choose to take the other assets like that, it might be good to also find beer bottles to use. The thing is, I don't like using like company labels that I'm not associated with. I think it's better if they're not in the world. But I don't know. It would also look very realistic and good. And this world, for the most part, is, going for that style, or realistic style, while at the same time still being comfortable in VR and being large. I had to block out the windows in the entrance so that you wouldn't see through, because you got the bathroom wall on the other side of that, and it's not like... And it's see-through, so you're just looking in the bathroom. It looks weird. Ooh, this asset right here. This is an asset I had in the Black Hat. 2 people had made that for me for a Secret Santa event. And it's super good. There is some lag issues, which is why I had to take it out of the Black Hat. But I figured, fuck it, I'll bring it in here. It'll be great, and it'll look awesome, because thousands of people aren't going to come in here probably and complain about it. So I brought it in here, threw it in, and it was great. And I was just, the big lag issue is on the cups itself. So I was just disabling the cups for Quest, and hopefully it wouldn't be a big issue at all. And I don't think it is. But after VRChat did an update like last Saturday after I had updated this. And since that update, those cups would like spawn in, like they would teleport to 0, and spawn infinitely, like well, I don't know if it was infinitively. Like, you could just keep grabbing those cups. I think eventually they disappeared. I have no idea how that could have happened, or like what they could have done in the update to cause something in the code of those drinks to spawn in at 0. It was really weird. So I kept the taps, so like you can grab them and play with them still, but I took the drinks out so that obviously, like, you don't want that happening. So Saturday I took the drinks out, and so now they're not in there, and hopefully we can figure out why that's happening, because those cups are really cool because you can fill them up with the beer taps. It's like one of the coolest assets I have, honestly. It's so good. This is me going through adding a ton of colliders all over the place. So normally when I do colliders, I'll have like a collider game object, and then I would do a couple more game objects. I'll have like colliders needed and colliders not needed, and then I can like toggle on and off the colliders not needed. But I've realized I only need the colliders not needed game object for when I have sofas, and I don't have any sofas because I never put colliders on like chairs and stuff like that because it always gets in the way. So all these colliders were actually kind of necessary. I also put colliders on the stairs where so that way it's a smooth walk up and down the stairs. But I also still keep the mesh collider collisions on the stairs too, so sometimes it's a little bumpy. This is me messing with the chairs, and the chairs are always so fucked. I don't know why. What am I doing in here? Oh, I grabbed the menu. I don't know, but chairs are always so fucked for me. I don't know why. Like, it seems pretty straightforward. You bring in the Udon prefab chair, you see the seat game object, and you think just to move that up, but once you mess with that collider, I have a really hard time trying to pinpoint where the seat option actually needs to be. And so I end up having to spend like hours trying to test it well, it's not hours. It's just a pain in the ass because you can't really... so I have the Cyan emulator in here where it emulates basically desktop mode VRChat in Unity Play, which is great. It saves so much time on testing stuff, but you can't really tell where your character is at with the seats. So to test that, I always have to go into the game and actually sit down and try to look underneath myself to see if there's any space there. And in this version, I still fucked it up because I won't multiply the chairs all around until I figure out the first one and make sure the first one's good. It's still kind of like it's still high. I don't know. It's just super annoying. I wish it was easier to figure it out. But who uses chairs, right? They're off by default because I don't even know if that host glitch is still a thing. That host glitch where like the host of the world will get stuck at a chair for a certain amount for everyone, and for it to be canceled out, they have to go and actually sit in the chair, or you turn off chairs if that's an option in that world. I just have chairs off by default now, which honestly is better because having that little toggle like always pop up literally right, this is me modeling the new pool table. Basically what I did here was I just took the top part of the prefab that they had given me and change the legs on it because they don't want to like mess with the mesh at the top, which is like where the like all the balls and the colliders need to match up in the right spots, so the balls are showing up where they need to show up. So I just kept the top part of that pool table the same and changed the legs. I had done like 5 different versions of this or something like that. This is the first one. This is using... I was at this point of building this world, so this is like last week also. Building this world, at this point, I was still using Harry T's version of the pool table because I didn't realize that Zeeksy, I think I'm saying their name right, but I didn't realize that they had put out a new prefab, which is honestly way better. I had some issues trying to get it to work, but at this point, I didn't realize that they had made that, so I had made this, brought it in, and honestly the UVs on the one Harry was using was kind of really weird, but the UVs on the okay, so this is me importing the new asset. The UVs on the other, you can see I just got compiler errors there. Something was screwed up, and this took forever to figure out what was going on. What I ended up having to do is re-importing the SDK, re-importing Udon Sharp, re-importing the video player that I was using, which I was using Merlin's video player, re-importing the billiards asset, and I just had to redo everything. But yeah, the first version on Harry's pool table there was a lot of UV issues, and there was some UV issues with the other one too. I don't think that was at the fault of the creator of it. I think it was just kind of fucked. just because I had just being imported from different programs. And so this is technically like the third attempt on the legs, but this is like the first attempt on the board, and I thought it looked pretty good. I was still using, so even though I had brought in the new prefab, I was still using the old mesh, which was a mistake. And it was giving me a lot of problems, and I was really annoyed, and I wanted to fight someone. So I said fuck it, and now I'm working on like small little props, like light switches and exit signs. I had made an exit sign all the way back. I made one for La Barista a long time ago, and honestly, I was using that. Every time I needed an exit sign, I always went back to that asset and used it. And this one, I was like, well, fuck it. I could just make my own and bring it into Substance and fuck with it. And that's what I did. I brought it in here and I fucked with it. And I saw... So Boolean tool, I realized can cause a lot of issues with UVing. And you could see it there where it looks really bad on the left side. Like the mesh is not right. Where the exit text is supposed to be, like, that's just supposed to be like indented, like extruded into the shape. While in Blender and in Unity, it looks fine. I basically just had to say, like, fuck it, just texture the inside what I need it to be, and it'll probably be fine. And I'll fix anything else by moving the UVs when I come back in. That's what I did, and those little small props turned out really good. I actually really liked them. The little vents and the exit sign ended up looking good. After modeling all these, I think the only thing I had left to model was the final version of the pool table that I had made, and then the background, like the exterior around the world, which I kept forgetting to make because I was so focused on the world. I ended up actually just going to the VRChat project, pulling out the exterior that I had made there, and using that as the like city sky thing that I used in this world, which ended up looking good. I ended up duplicating the planes to add more to the skyline here. So like the rest from this point forward, the rest I had to do was just like all Unity stuff and getting things ready. The particles for the freezer, and then I added dust particles in the world, finding sound effects for the like heater and the fridges, which I think they all turned out really good, setting up and making sure the triggers work, or the udon code or whatever it is. That was me looking for tracks on royalty-free tracks to use. And basically what I do with royalty-free tracks is I'll find some and I'll bring it into DaVinci, and then I will put together like little playlists, which these are just 3 songs from the YouTube royalty-free playlist, and then I'll bring it into Audacity and I'll compress there, bring it into Unity, compress one more time, and it always sounds fine. Like in VR, like especially if you're using like the VR headset and stuff, it like all sounds good. At least for me. I don't really have a musical ear or a good, like, I can hear a lot of shit, but I'm really bad at audio stuff. This is me putting in all the mirrors, super important. There's only 3 mirror spots. Originally, I was going to have more. I was going to have one by the pool table area. I'm looking at this pool table. It looks like it's the new pool table that I had modeled, and I guess I must not have recorded me modeling it. It came out really good, and I'm super proud of this pool table, honestly. I had made a bunch more, and they're actually on Booth for free. If you download the billiards prefab that's available for free, you can go to my booth and download these pool tables. I made like 4 different versions of pool tables, with 2 of the different versions have like 4 textures. One has 3 textures and the other one has like 4 textures each. This is me getting the background. You can see I'm duplicating some of those planes, bringing it around because there's like more points to view it than in the VRChat. And I had realized I had forgotten to add the little arm I just threw the simple metal material that I had and threw it on there. But yeah, most of this stuff is like super quick. Just small stuff you gotta fix that you notice when you're actually walking around and doing tests and stuff. There's a lot of points in this project where it just sits because all I did was I'd like get up and leave and go get food or something and I wouldn't stop the recording. But I think for the most part that's it. After this ends, I'm gonna go into, oh, you can see me. This is me messing with the animations for the doors. I got all the animations to work, but the Udon code just was not working. And I was using the same code I had used for, the same code that I had used for the, what's it called? The beer taps in the Black Cat, which it's just an Udon code that triggers an animation bool, which I figured, this is me fucking with it, I figured it'd be like the same thing with these doors, because all it is an animation bool, and since I couldn't figure out the hinge thing, I thought it would be simple, but it wasn't, and I couldn't figure it out. Either way, it doesn't matter. This is me getting all the particles and the triggers for the particles, and I have a sound effect on that water particle, which is pretty good. I actually ended up using, for the longest time I've been using standard to get these materials, but my friend told me about Autodesk, and I for some reason thought Autodesk didn't work on Quest, but it totally does, and now I'm using AutoQuest because I initially was like editing the textures to work with the standard shader, and now with Autodesk you don't have to. Also, another thing I added was a prefab for the audio to make sure that the audio like kind of acts more properly with walls, since this is technically kind of like a smaller space. I didn't want voices to be over each other, especially if you're right above people near the bar. I think it turned out really good. I didn't really mess with the settings that much, but it came out pretty good. So basically, this is basically it. I'm putting like the last touches in, fixing some things. I saw the UVs on this were kind of fucked, but they weren't. I just had I think I had the wrong roughness on it. But it was like, do these small fixes, some final bakes, and once this ends here, I'm going to go into VRChat and I'm going to walk around and show you the final version of what I had made and what I had published last Friday, which is now public. I'll probably also post another video tomorrow walking around that's just the walkthrough. But yeah, that's the world. Love how it turned out. Alright, this is about to finish. I'm gonna go and jump in and walk around the world, and I can show you how it turned out. Alright, so this is the final walkthrough. This is what I uploaded Friday. For the most part, there's been a couple updates since then, but basically what you just saw in that speed build, this is the final result. It turned out really good. I had the drinks that I had to take out that I was talking about. They were like right there. I took them out because they were giving me issues since that update. Of course, I got my pancakes. And here's the pool table. God, I'm so proud of these. Or this one. Yeah, I've got like multiple versions of this now that's up on my booth. They're up for free if you want them. It just came out so good. Some of the TVs are for the video player, while some are for the pool table. If you actually go, you can come over here, and there's an option on here called pool table video player. I need to stand up and actually give myself more room. Okay, so what that does is it enables the video player that is above here to show up on the TVs, and the TVs that are black still are what are linked to the video player. If we go up here, I'll show you the upstairs. This is this entrance to the upstairs. You can see I've got the table, or I've got the TV here that shows the table that's on there. Also here I used a prefab to not only have a high quality and a low quality mirror, but also a transparent one. When I first put this in, I had it in front of this railing here, and it looked like I was rendering over the balcony, which was really weird. So now I put it behind and it's so much better. It looks really good. Seems like people like it. So yeah, this is open floor. Here's the stage. A lot of the same assets I used in the Black Hat. And there's the other entrance to downstairs. We'll go that way. I've got a sound effect on these heaters that look really, or they sound really good. I really like them. We'll go down this way. And this just wraps around at the front. And then if you go over here, here's the other mirror. And then here's the bathroom. And yeah, that's basically it. This world took about 6 weeks, I think, to make. Well, it might have been longer than that. I started it like right after I got the pool table prefab and it was made available. So, but then I started it, I created like these booths and these tables and some other things and that other version of the world, if you remember, in like part 1. And then I deleted all of that because it was really stupid and looked shitty. And then I made this. And this took about 6 weeks. Honestly, this is one of my favorite worlds. When I want to play pool, I'm gonna come here. It's exactly what I wanted. That pool table, obviously, because I made it. But yeah, that's it. That's it. I think that's all I got. I'm gonna record another walkthrough by itself, so I'm probably gonna post that right after this video. But yeah, I hope you got some value out of that video. And if you need help with world building, hit me up. Alright, bye.